You ever have a moment where you realize the whole story you thought you were living? The quiet street, the neat lawns, the friendly neighbor waving across the yard was actually just a set for somebody else's twisted game? Because I'll tell you, that was me, standing there on my porch, Laura at my side, while Karen screamed into her phone for the cops. "Officer, you need to do something. They're threatening me right now." Her voice cut through the heat of the afternoon like broken glass, shrill enough to set off the neighbor's dog. I wanted to laugh. $50,000. That was the fine she'd slapped us with for a garage door panel. Not a pit bull, not some criminal enterprise, just a panel, maybe a shade off from her little rulebook. "Karen, this is insane," I said. But she just smiled, that HOA queen smile, smug and chilly as ever, and promised, "We'll see what the police think about your attitude, David." Yeah, that happened. 8 minutes later, cruiser rolls up. Officer Miller, young, pressed uniform, ready to break up a brawler, so he thought. Karen flew at him, clutching her phone, wailing about legal requirements and safety and community standards. The whole street felt it, curtains twitching, joggers tying shoes mid-stride, pretending not to stare. Miller turned to Laura, me wife, just off a 12-hour shift, ready to grill her like she was a threat. But then he recognized her. You could see it in his face, the split second where he put it all together. "Commander Stone?" he stammered. And I swear Karen's clipboard hit the driveway with a crack. She sputtered, "What did you just call her?" And Miller, poor kid, backed up so fast he nearly tripped. "She's my boss, ma'am." Silence, heavy enough to press the breath from your lungs. See, what nobody in Maple Ridge Estates knew, not even me, not really, was that Laura ran deep. Not just my wife, not just the person you called when your gutters overflowed, but the one cops called when things got too complicated for protocol. And that, as it turned out, was exactly what was brewing under our slice of paradise. Because this wasn't just about a garage door, or even a Karen with too much time on her hands. This was about a power playa neighborhood chess match, and the real game hadn't even started yet. Let me back up a sec. When we moved in, I thought we'd landed in one of those perfect neighborhoods you see in magazines. Maples blazing gold in October. Lawns so manicured you'd think Martha Stewart herself lived on the block. Kids on bikes, folks waving, the whole 9 yards. After years of wrangling restless teenagers about the Constitution, yeah, I teach history, I kind of crave that predictability. Order. And the glue holding it all together? Karen, the so-called guardian angel of Maple Ridge. Organized food drives, handed out cookies, always knew whose dog was missing before the flyers even went up. At first, it was comforting, even impressive. But Laura always had this cop's sixth sense about people. "She's too good," she whispered at our first HOA meeting. "Nobody's that perfect without a reason." She wasn't wrong. Karen could smile you right into a corner, offer you a casserole with one hand while measuring your fence with the other. She'd drop by with color swatches if you dared repaint your shutters, hand you printed copies of regulations for stuff you hadn't even noticed. At first, I admired the efficiency until I realized she had a copy of every rule, every clause, ready to whip out like a sheriff with a badge. Still, life was comfortable, even easy. Laura kept watch, but I brushed it off, just a plugged-in neighbor, right? But there's a difference between nosy and informed, and Karen was always a little too informed. The day it all shifted, a letter showed up Tuesday morning, heavy paper, embossed letterhead, photos of my garage door, neat as a police file. Laura was pouring coffee, and I just stared at that envelope, stomach in knots for reasons I couldn't name. "Open it," she said, and I did. $50,000. For a garage door panel. I laughed, stunned. "It's the same model as half the street." Laura read the legalese, brow furrowed, cop mode in full effect. "Immediate payment required. Failure to comply, lien enforcement." Her voice went cold. "This isn't a warning. It's a threat." And right there I saw it. This was pressure, not protocol. That night, I marched down to the community center, Karen holding court after her little garden meeting. She smiled, all fake sympathy, repeating rules are rules. When Laura stepped in, pointing out the other 7 houses with identical doors, none of them fine. Karen's smile flickered, just for a second, before snapping back into place. "Perhaps you've been flagged for additional review." That word flag had hit me like ice water. Laura muttered, "She's targeting us." I wanted to believe it was just petty HOA nonsense. But 50 grand? That's not enforcement, that's a weapon. 2 days later, Marcus, our handyman neighbor, stopped by, toolbox slung over his shoulder. He's the kind of guy you want in your foxhole, always quick with a joke, a spare part, or a six-pack. He was fixing our gate when he let it slip. Karen asked me to keep an eye out for violations. Jot stuff down, help folks avoid surprises. My stomach twisted. Laura's face went hard. "Did she ask you to focus on our house?" Marcus looked sheepish. "Yeah, but just to help you out." Some help. That night, I walked the block, notebook in hand, teacher instincts in overdrive. 13 mailboxes, 7 too tall, 3 too short, all in violation. Only ours cited. I came home, hands shaking, told Laura, "We're not paranoid, we're marked." Friday afternoon, I came home bone-tired, dropped my keys behind Laura's planters, reached down and felt something cold, Metallica surveillance camera. Law enforcement grade, not Amazon junk. My heart bottomed out. Laura examined it, her face darkening. Only someone with professional connections can get these. And in that instant, we both knew this wasn't about a garage door, a mailbox, or even an overzealous neighbor. Someone was watching us, and not for the HOA. The next day, the emergency HOA meeting text came through. Community center packed wall to wall. Karen, clipboard in hand, launched right into a speech about troubling reports of surveillance equipment, flipping the script before we even spoke. The crowd was nervous, neighbors eyeing us, wondering what was really going on. Then Linda, the casserole queen from 3 doors down, stood up, trembling. "If someone's planting cameras, how do we know our families are safe?" The crowd murmured, and then Marcus piled on, "Coached for sure," talking about people thinking they're above the rules. I saw Karen's fingerprints all over it. I stood holding up the camera. "If we're talking about surveillance, let's talk about this found in my home, aimed at my family. Not some toy. Professional equipment." The mood shifted, suspicion turning to shock. Karen scrambled, spinning new excuses. Maybe someone framed her. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. But Laura whispered, "She's turning them against us." As the meeting broke up, Karen called someone from the parking lot, her voice low and urgent. "We need to accelerate the timeline. The camera was discovered earlier than expected." That's when it hit. Mesh was playing a longer, deeper game. The knock at our door was sharp, cold. Karen, mask off, eyes darting. "The fine must be paid today. No appeals." Laura, calm as ever, cited the ordinance, told her we'd be appealing. Karen's mask slipped, fury in her voice. "There are consequences." She called the police, voice trembling with staged fear. "They're aggressive. I fear for my safety." 8 minutes later, police rolled up again. Miller and then Johnson, both recognizing Laura. "Commander Stone, is everything all right?" Karen melted down, raving about rules and intimidation, but the officers shook their heads. "This is civil, not criminal. If it's about a mailbox, it belongs in court." Karen was left trembling on the steps, her whole little empire wobbling. But she didn't retreat. Next day, she was out sowing doubts with the neighbors, whispering that Laura's authority made everyone less safe. Pretty soon, the street was cold. Waves disappeared. Cookouts went quiet. Laura took it hard, but I'd seen this before: high school rumor campaigns, power plays. So I started knocking on doors, calmly laying out the facts. The measurements, the surveillance, Karen's contradictions. Some listened, some didn't, but the cracks started to show. Marcus crossed over first, bringing me his notebook. She asked me to track Laura when she left, when she came home. I thought it was neighborly concern. Now I see it's surveillance. He handed over pages of dates and times, all about us. And then he whispered, "Detective Walsh, Financial Crimes, has been poking around since you moved in." Now it was getting serious. Laura, pen tapping on the kitchen table, eyes burning, said, "This isn't neighborhood gossip anymore. It's professional. She's in the middle of it. Her voice was steady. We set a trap. Laura handed me a tiny recorder, mapped out the plan. I was to meet Walsh at a neutral spot, play the worried husband, and let him talk. At the diner, Walsh looked every inch the detective, but there was calculation in his eyes. We talked about stress, about Laura's hours, about the surveillance. Then he slipped up, mentioning details only the person who planted the camera could know. I kept my cool, but inside, I was screaming. Got you. Laura took the recording to internal affairs. The fallout was fast, Walsh confessed, crumbling under the weight of his own voice played back in that office, admitting debts, leaks, and a handler named Lasaka Karen. And just like that, the truth broke open. Haley Sanders doesn't exist, Laura told me. She's Detective Lisa Cooper, Chicago PD, vanished in 2020, wanted for $347,000 stolen from evidence. Our guardian angel? A fugitive. The final HOA meeting was packed. Laura stood at the front, laying out the whole story. The surveillance, the scam, the real identity. The room reeled, neighbors in disbelief. Marcus produced his notebook, proof of months of surveillance requests. Linda broke down, realizing she'd been a pawn. When the whole crowd marched to Karen/Lisa's house, it was empty, curtains gone, furniture gone, file cabinet left behind in the basement, full of surveillance on every family, not just ours. 4 towns worth of records. A chill ran through us all. The FBI arrived. Agent Torres called Lisa one of the most sophisticated infiltrators we've ever tracked. Millions stolen. You're the first to catch her before she finished the cycle. We were all stunned, but the story wasn't over. That night, Linda's daughter pounded on our door. Her mom was missing. Marcus saw movement at the old community center. Laura and I, plus half the FBI, converged. Lisa stood inside with a taser pressed to Linda's ribs, spinning one last story, claiming to be a protector, not a predator, blaming Laura, blaming us. Torres negotiated. SWAT moved in through the maintenance tunnels, Marcus remembered. And after a tense standoff, Lisa was dragged out, still smiling, still threatening. You have no idea what you've destroyed. Now they'll come for all of you. 8 months later, the courtroom in Chicago was packed with victims. Lisa, all suited up by her fancy lawyers, still looked like she thought she might talk her way out. The prosecution rolled out everything: Agent Torres charts, Marcus notebooks, Linda's tearful testimony, Walsh's broken confession. Lisa took the stand, mask slipping. These people needed me. If they were too blind to see that, it's not my crime, it's their weakness. The jury saw right through her. Guilty on 22 federal counts. 22 years in prison, $2.1 million restitution. Even Congress reacted, passing new laws for HOA background checks. In Meadowbrook Heights, Linda took over as HOA president. Marcus ran a real neighborhood watch. Laura led a community outreach unit. Our mailbox stands crooked, but a plaque at the base reads, "In memory of trust restored." But sometimes, when the street is too quiet and the wind rattles that old mailbox, I remember Lisa's words: this was bigger than me. Now they'll come for all of you. Bluff or prophecy? That's what I want to know. What would you do if the real villain lived right next door, smiling, baking cookies, measuring your door? Was it justice or just the start of a bigger story? Drop your thoughts below. Where do you draw the line between order and control, trust and paranoia? Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that community isn't built on rules. It's built on truth.